Hello and welcome. This is going to be another Divine Partnership Coaching video. And I think it's going to be its own standalone and also an addition to the how to get communication from your twin flame. And it's still a little bit in the works. So play with what resonates for you and don't worry about the rest, and maybe check in again and, who knows how long, and see if I've added to it. So one of the things that I have found most useful and that I've noticed, okay, so typically you will see other twins talking about like when they get to a place of being like, I'm done talking to you, I'm glowing up, I'm moving on, I'm doing this and that, then they will get communication from their twin flame. Typically this is divine feminine to divine masculine. Like it's the runner chaser energy. And part of the problem though is that when you block someone or you're in a mood, you're like, no, I'm mad at you, you've done all this stuff and you've messed up and you don't deserve my time, you're still in runner chaser energy. Now the twin flame dynamic is to a degree unique in many ways because there is a point and purpose to the runner chaser energy, but most of it is about healing. And so for me, I mean, I don't knock any way that anybody else wants to do it and what works for them. For me though, what I want is, well, for one thing, I don't necessarily think the runner chaser energy is bad. It's what kind of contrast do you want? But I think that there's something in it that we're not understanding. And I think it's more linked up with like when we get, okay, I talked about this in some of the earlier series, but if you have two people, like, okay, when you're riding a bike or riding a horse, wherever you look is where the bike goes or where the horse goes. So imagine that you've got you and your twin. If you're looking at them and they're looking at you, where does the bike go? Or where do the bikes go? Or where do the horses go? They run into each other, right? And so if instead you start looking straight ahead and you're like, I want to go to that mountain down there. I cannot quite see what's on the other side of it, but I see that there's a star at the top of the hill, and I really like the moon set that's going on. I wonder what the sunrise would be like over there. I'm going to go over there. Then, as you start to go over there, your twin flame will in fact, the irony is they'll be looking at you more, because sometimes too, let me add to that first metaphor on the bikes. If you're looking at them, a lot of times if they have a karmic in a romantic type relationship, or their work is a karmic or anything like that, when you're looking at them, they're looking at the karmic. So then you're all going into karmic energy, right? So both things can happen. But then when you stop looking at them, they stop looking at the karmic and start wondering, where'd divine feminine go? And especially if you're not angry, and because they can feel you. Like if they are really your twin, they can feel how you feel. And if you are angry, then they are likely angry too. If you're feeling resentful, they're feeling resentful. If you feel like a victim, they feel like a victim. But if you feel good and you like what you're doing, and you don't mind what you're doing, and you're like, hey, there's an adventure over there. I know that somehow along the way to get to that plateau on the mountain, to see that moonrise and moonrise and sunrise is going to be fun. I don't know what I'm going to find on there. I don't know if my DM or DF is going to be there with me throughout most of the journey or not, but I know that I'm going to have fun. I know there's going to be contrast. I know that it's going to be up and down. I'm going to go that way. And when you have that sort of energy and you're going that way, and your twin flame, like all they have is the energy that they've sat with and the karmic energy that's with them, which it's not delicious, right? It's not divine feminine energy. It's not divine masculine energy. It's karmic energy. It's there to help learn lessons, to help us figure out what we want through knowing what we don't want, and things like that. So then, you might not even, you might still be in communication with them, or just barely, or you might not be talking to them at all, but they're going to start feeling that pull of you doing your own thing and feeling good and liking it, and that feels a lot more pleasant, and it's not so scary, because a lot of times our twin flames will avoid talking to us because, in fact, for that matter, divine feminine or divine masculine, when we're in our righteous energy, can be very scary and very hurtful. And when you're not in that energy, even if you have every righteous reason for being so, but you're instead having fun and you're feeling good and you've got good thoughts in your mind about yourself and your twin and what you're doing, then as you steer your bike that way, they start to look at you, and then they start steering their bike in the direction that you go in. And the karmics start to notice that too, and they start trying to pull them back. But because you're not worried about what's going on with your, your masculine or feminine and or their karmics, and you don't need to be. You don't need to take any responsibility for what happens with them. You only need to manage you. And as you move forward and you're enjoying what you're doing, they start to enjoy seeing you enjoy what you're doing. And they continue to move forward in that energy with you. And part of that is that invisible string connection too. And they cannot help to a certain degree to go with you. So I think part of the runner chaser energy is that once we get out of our shadows and we heal enough to be moving forward and doing what we love and not focusing on relationships and loving ourselves and the adventure we go on, then they reflect us and they want to do that too. And they see a living example of it happening. They watch us doing it. And the more they watch us doing it and not needing anybody, and yet also getting plenty of attention and friendship and support, which they often start to lose the more that they connect, the more that they stay loyal to karmic and toxic energy, the more they lose that stuff. They lose their financial abundance, they lose their familial connections, they lose their friendships. Even a lot of the toxic ones will not want to be around them when they're in karmic relationships, especially because if they are a twin flame, it's going to be very intense. Now, I think that's more to do with what the runner chaser stuff is about. Is like, don't chase them and also don't run, but enjoy the fact that if you decide to saunter down the path and see if you can find a beautiful moonrise on the plateau of a foothill, they're going to notice. Like, if you had an audience and you knew they could see you doing anything, and that when you enjoy yourself and you show yourself as a healthy, independent person capable of healthy interpersonal relationships and interdependent relationships, what would you do? Like, if you could, I don't even want to say show off, but if you could just be yourself and do anything, and you knew that in being yourself more and more and being in the vibration of joy and love, that you would get a greater audience, not just from your masculine, but from others, and that you don't even need any of it, what would you do? Would you juggle? Would you dance? Would you do YouTube videos? What would you do? Would you write and draw and do art? Would you crochet? Would you build birdhouses? Like, what would you do? What puts a smile on your face when it's just you? Do that. Now, the other thing that has been a little bit more of a challenge is, how do you get yourself to stop missing communication from your twin flame when they're not talking to you? And especially if you got other stuff going on in your life, and if you were used to that communication, or you're really, you just really want to talk to them and you enjoy their presence and stuff like that, you have to get to the point to where you don't miss it, because then you're holding it out of place. If you're missing something, you're telling the universe, this thing is missing from me, and you manifest more of that. So you want to feel like you already have that communication. That's part of getting into embracing the 5D communication stuff. When you feel like you already have it, you get more of it in the 3D, because you're telling the universe, I already have this and I really like it. So you get more of it. It's funny, the light came on at that, right? And then you want to get to the point to where the distance in the middle between communications becomes almost exciting rather than anxiety provoking. And what I've been doing recently, and it's really funny because I find myself thinking it and then I get a text, or I think there's been some secret communication sort of attempts through, like, like WhatsApp things and things like that lately, but we'll see. But what I've been thinking of it as is, when, at least I was taught, when you hear thunder, if you count like 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000, 4 1000, 5 1000, you wait for the next clap of thunder, you can tell how close the storm is or far away, like if it's over your head. So if you think about the distance in communication, like say you're talking about a text or a call, so the longer, or the if you think about it as like, when they're in karmic situationships, they're in a storm. So actually, the longer the distance that goes between them, between one text to you and another, let's say normally you get a text every few hours, or a response or something like that, and then you go a day and they don't say anything, and then you go 2 days and they don't say anything, and then you go like maybe a week and you barely had any bits of communication. If you start to think of that as like, oh, you know what, the quieter they are, the more likely it is the storm is over, or ending. At least the thunder is moving far away, which means the karmic energy is moving